The whisper was so faint it was almost lost in the clatter of cutlery and the low hum of the diner's fluorescent lights. A ghost of a sound, carrying a weight that settled in the pit of Dominic Stick's Hartley's stomach like a cold stone. He was halfway through a plate of lukewarm steak and eggs, the coffee beside it bitter on his tongue, when the little girl slid out of the booth behind him. She couldn't have been more than 10, with wide, terrified brown eyes and a pale face framed by dark, messy hair. She moved with a practiced stillness, a way of trying to be invisible that Styx recognized with a jolt. She didn't touch him at first. She just stood there, her small hands clenched into fists at her sides, her gaze locked on the diner's glass door. Then, her courage must have surged, because she took a tiny step closer, her breath hitching. She leaned in, her lips almost brushing the patched leather of his Iron Valley MC vest. "He knows where I am." The 5 words were a splinter of ice in the mundane warmth of the roadside eatery on Route 17. Styx froze, his fork hovering over his plate. He didn't turn his head, didn't make any sudden moves. 22 years as a state trooper had taught him that panic was a fire, and the wrong reaction was the fuel. His gaze flickered to the reflection in the polished chrome of the napkin dispenser. He could see her, a small, trembling silhouette against the backdrop of faded red vinyl. "He knows where I am." It wasn't a child's game. It wasn't a flight of fancy. It was a statement of fact delivered with the chilling finality of a death sentence. Styx was 52 years old. He'd retired from the force 3 years prior, trading his trooper's uniform for the full-time brotherhood of the Iron Valley Motorcycle Club, where he served as sergeant-at-arms. He'd seen the absolute worst of humanity in his career: the broken homes, the shattered lives, the predators who moved in the shadows. He knew the look of real fear. It was staring back at him from the distorted reflection on the napkin dispenser. Slowly, carefully, he set his fork down. He kept his voice low, a gravelly rumble that wouldn't carry. "Who knows where you are, kid?" Her whole body flinched, but she didn't run. She took a shaky breath. Him. He's not supposed to. Mom said he can't come near me. We left. We drove for 2 days, but he found us. He called the phone in the motel room this morning. He said he was watching. He said he'd be here soon. Styx's blood ran cold. This was a custody dispute gone toxic, a restraining order violation waiting to happen. Or worse. His training kicked in, overriding the simple desire to enjoy a quiet meal on his way to a regional club meeting. He finally turned, just his head, to look at her properly. Tears were welling in her big eyes, but she was fighting them back with a ferocity that broke his heart. "Where's your mom?" She pointed a trembling finger toward the diner's kitchen. "She's working. Her car broke down. She had to take a job here so we can get it fixed. She doesn't know he found us. I didn't want to scare her." The pieces clicked into place. A mother on the run, a broken-down car, a child trapped in a terrifying limbo. "Did you tell anyone else? The manager? The waitress who took my order?" The girl's face crumpled. A single tear escaped and traced a path down her dusty cheek. "I tried. I told the lady at the counter. She gave me a lollipop and said I had a big imagination. I told the manager my mom works for, and he said not to bother her while she's on her shift. He said kids say weird things. Nobody believes me." The words hit Styx with the force of a physical blow. "Nobody believes me." He'd heard those words before, from victims whose stories were too inconvenient, too messy, too frightening for polite society to handle. He'd spent a career fighting for the people nobody else would listen to. He looked into her terrified eyes, and in them he saw every child he'd ever pulled from a wreck, every runaway he'd ever brought home, every victim who just needed one person to see their truth. He leaned forward, his weathered face softening. "I believe you." The relief that washed over the girl's face was staggering. It was like a dam breaking. Her shoulders slumped, and a sob she'd been holding back finally escaped. "My name is Maya," she whispered. Styx gave her a small, grim nod. "I'm Styx, and I'm not going anywhere. Now, I want you to go sit back in your booth and try to look bored. Can you do that for me? Just read the menu or draw on a napkin. Don't look at the door. I'll watch the door." She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, and scurried back to the booth behind him. Styx watched her go in the reflection, a small, brave soldier in a war she should never have had to fight. He looked at the glass door, the sun glinting off the passing traffic on the highway. He said he'd be here soon. The threat hung in the air, a poisonous vapor. Styx pushed his plate away. His appetite was gone. He had a new job now. He was a sentinel. He was a wall. And nothing was getting through that door until he knew this little girl was safe. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that the bravest thing you can ever do is listen. A child's fear is never imaginary, and as Styx was about to prove, one person who truly believes can be the only shield a vulnerable soul needs. No matter where you are in the world, let's send a message that we hear them and we believe them. Styx settled back in his seat, but his posture had changed. He was no longer a weary traveler. He was a guardian on watch. His body was angled toward the entrance, his eyes never leaving the door and the parking lot beyond. Every car that pulled in, every person who walked toward the entrance was subject to his silent, intense scrutiny. He drank his now cold coffee, his mind a whirring machine of tactics and contingencies. His first instinct was to call 911, but he held back. What would he say? A 10-year-old girl feels like she's being watched? He'd been on the other end of those calls. Without a man on the scene, without a direct threat, a patrol car might swing by in an hour if they weren't busy. By then, it could be too late. The man, the him, could have come and gone, taking Maya with him. A quiet, quick snatch and grab was the professional's move. No, a 911 call right now would be a shot in the dark. He needed more. He needed presence. He needed his own kind of backup. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over his contacts. He wasn't just Styx, the retired trooper. He was Styx, Sergeant-at-Arms of the Iron Valley MC. The patch on his back wasn't just a piece of embroidered cloth. It was a declaration. It meant he was never alone. He found the name he was looking for, Bull, Press. He hit call. Bull, the president of his chapter, a man whose real name was Frank, but whose quiet, immense strength had earned him his road name decades ago, answered on the second ring. Styx. "You should be halfway to Albany by now. Change of plans, Bull. I'm at the Starlight Diner on Route 17. Got a situation." Bull's voice changed instantly, losing its casual tone and taking on the sharp edge of command. "What kind of situation? Cops? Rival club? Worse. A kid. A little girl. She's in trouble. Her deadbeat dad, sounds like. Restraining order. History of stalking. He knows she's here. He's coming for her." There was a pause on the other end, but it wasn't a pause of hesitation. It was the sound of a mind processing information and formulating a plan. "How sure are you?" "She told me no one else believed her." "That's how sure I am." "My gut is screaming, Frank. It feels like every bad domestic call I ever rolled up on." That was all Bull needed to hear. Styx's gut had saved the lives of more than one brother over the years. It was a trusted commodity in the Iron Valley MC. "I'm on my way. Razor and Ghost are with me. We're 20 minutes out. Who else do you need?" "Everyone who can get here. Tell them to come quiet. No grand entrance. Park on the edges of the lot. Come in 1 or 2 at a time. Grab a table. Order coffee. I need eyes. We're boxing this place in. I'm on the door. Nothing gets in or out without me seeing it." "Consider it done," Bull said, his voice a low growl of certainty. "We're rolling." Sticks hung up. 20 minutes. He looked at the clock on the wall. 3:15 p.m. For the next 20 minutes, he and Maya were on their own. He took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. He was a force of one, but an army was on the way. He caught Maya's eye in the reflection. She was pretending to read the dessert menu, her small face a mask of forced calm. He gave a barely perceptible nod, a silent message. "I'm still here. We're okay." He watched the waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 40s with a name tag that read, "Brenda, refill a customer's coffee." He flagged her down. "Another coffee, please, and I'll take the check. But I'm in no hurry." Brenda gave him a weary smile. "Take all the time you need, hun." He paid the bill in cash, leaving a generous tip. He didn't want any reason to be distracted when things got hot. For the next 15 minutes, an eternity passed. A family with 3 noisy kids came and went. A pair of truckers took a corner booth, their conversation a low drone. A salesman in a cheap suit talked loudly on his phone. Each one drew Styx's full attention until he was satisfied they weren't the threat. He cataloged their cars, their clothes, their mannerisms. The trooper in him was building a mental file of the entire scene. Then, at 3:34 p.m., he saw it. A dark green Harley-Davidson Street Glide, its engine a familiar, throaty rumble, pulled into the far end of the parking lot. Bull. He dismounted with an economy of motion, his massive frame draped in the same Iron Valley leather as Styx. He was followed by 2 more bikes. Razor, the club's de facto lawyer, and Ghost, a wiry ex-Special Forces operator who moved with an unnerving silence. They didn't look toward Styx. They didn't acknowledge him at all. They ambled toward the diner like any other travelers. Bull held the door for Razor and Ghost, then followed them in. Razor took a booth by the window, giving him a clear view of the parking lot. Ghost slid onto a stool at the counter, his back to the room, but his eyes on the reflection in the polished coffee machine. Bull walked past Styx's table and took a seat in the booth directly across from Maya's, giving her a gentle, reassuring nod that was so subtle only someone looking for it would see it. Over the next hour, the diner subtly transformed. 4 more bikes arrived, parking strategically to control the entrance and exit of the lot. Then, a beat-up work van owned by Smokey, a brother who ran a construction business. Then, 2 more bikes. By 4:30 p.m., there were 12 members of the Iron Valley MC inside the Starlight Diner. They occupied 5 booths and half the counter. They spoke in low tones, ordered coffee and pie, and blended in. But to a trained eye, they were a net. A carefully constructed web of leather and steel, and Styx was the spider sitting at its center. If you've ever witnessed something terrible and felt the crushing weight of not being believed, if you've ever been the small voice trying to speak truth to a world that wasn't listening, pause for just a moment to like and share this story. Because what happened next would prove that a brotherhood forged in loyalty and bound by honor is a force of nature. When one brother stands his ground, an army stands with him. Now back to the story. The hours crawled by. 4 o'clock became 5, and 5 bled into 6. The diner's afternoon lull gave way to the early dinner rush. Families and couples came and went, oblivious to the silent, coiled tension in the room. The Iron Valley brothers were monuments of patience. They nursed their coffees, their eyes constantly scanning, their presence a low-frequency hum of readiness that only Styx and Maya could truly feel. Maya's mother, a woman named Sarah with worry etched into the lines around her eyes, came out of the kitchen twice on her break. The first time, she smiled gratefully at Bull, who had told her to put Maya's meal on his tab. The second time, she looked at her daughter, then at the quiet assembly of bikers, a flicker of confusion and worry on her face. Maya just gave her a small, shaky smile, a silent plea for her not to ask questions. Styx hadn't moved from his post. His back ached, his legs were stiff, but his focus was absolute. He was a statue carved from granite and resolve. He had become part of the diner's furniture, a fixture by the door that the staff now simply walked around. Then, at 6:47 p.m., it happened. A nondescript blue sedan, a 10-year-old Toyota Camry with a dent in the passenger side door, pulled into the parking lot. It didn't park in a space. It idled near the entrance, its driver's side window facing the diner's door. Styx felt it before he saw it. A change in the air, a charge of electricity. His gaze locked onto the car. He couldn't see the driver clearly through the tinted glass, but he didn't need to. This was him. The casual, predatory way the car was positioned, ready for a quick departure, screamed intent. Inside the diner, a silent signal passed through the brothers. Ghost, at the counter, straightened slightly. Razor put his phone down. Bull's hand, which had been resting on the table, disappeared under his leather vest. The car door opened, and a man got out. He was of average height, with thinning brown hair and a soft, unremarkable face that made him instantly forgettable. But his eyes were sharp, intense, and fixed on the diner's entrance with a chilling focus. He wore a cheap windbreaker and jeans. He looked like anyone. He looked like no one. He was the monster who haunted a little girl's dreams. He started walking toward the door. Styx didn't stand up. He didn't need to. He simply shifted his weight, making his presence known. He was a 250-pound roadblock of muscle and leather. The man reached the door and pulled the handle. Styx didn't move. The man pulled again, his path blocked by Styx's leg, which was casually propped up on the opposite side of the small entryway. The man's eyes, which had been scanning the diner's interior, finally focused on Styx. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "Excuse me," he said, his voice thin and reedy. "You're in the way." Styx took a slow sip of his water. He looked the man up and down, his gaze lingering for a moment, an old trooper's trick for unsettling a suspect. "Diner's full," he rumbled, his voice flat and cold. The man's face tightened. "I can see empty tables. I'm here to pick up my daughter." "Maya." Styx felt a surge of cold fury. The casual way he said her name, like she was a piece of property. In the reflection of the glass, he could see Maya shrink back in her booth, her face ashen. "I don't think so," Styx said, his voice dropping even lower. The man's mask of civility began to crack. A flush crept up his neck. "Who the hell are you? You have no right to stop me. That's my daughter." At the word daughter, 12 men in the diner shifted in their seats. The collective scrape of boots on linoleum was a sound more menacing than a gunshot. The man's eyes darted around the room, finally noticing the silent, watching figures. He saw the identical patches, the grim faces, the unified stillness. He saw the net. Fear, stark and primal, finally flashed in his eyes. He looked back at Styx, his bravado crumbling. "This is harassment. I'll call the cops." "That's a great idea," a new voice said. The man spun around. Bull was standing behind him, having exited through the diner's side door and circled around. He was flanked by Razor and Ghost. They formed a tight, impassable semicircle. "In fact," Bull continued, his voice calm and deadly, "my friend already did." As if on cue, the flash of red and blue lights painted the parking lot. 2 county sheriff's vehicles screeched to a halt, boxing in the blue sedan. A deputy Styx knew well, a young but capable man named Miller, stepped out, his hand on his sidearm. "Mark Peterson?" Miller's voice boomed across the lot. The man, Mark, visibly deflated. The fight went out of him, replaced by a sullen, cornered animal rage. You have a restraining order against you filed by Sarah Peterson on behalf of her minor child, Maya Peterson. You are in violation of that order by being within 500 yards of her. You are under arrest. Mark's head snapped back toward the diner, his eyes locking on the small face in the window. The pure venom in his gaze made Styx's blood boil. Before he could scream her name, before he could utter a single threat, Ghost stepped forward, and the man was on the hood of his car, his hands being cuffed behind his back. It was over. The 6-hour vigil had ended not with a bang, but with the quiet, satisfying click of handcuffs. Inside the diner, a collective breath was released. Maya buried her face in her hands, her small body shaking with relieved sobs. Bull walked back inside, came to Styx's table, and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Good call, brother," he said simply. Styx just nodded, his eyes still on the flashing lights outside. He felt the exhaustion of the last 6 hours settle into his bones, but it was a good kind of tired. It was the weariness of a battle won. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Bike Diaries, because what happened next would prove that the end of a crisis is the beginning of a connection. Brotherhood isn't just about showing up for the fight, it's about staying for the healing. Hit that hype button, and if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Now back to the story. The chaos of the arrest faded into the quiet efficiency of law enforcement procedure. As Mark Peterson was placed in the back of a squad car, his face a mask of impotent fury, Sarah came bursting out of the kitchen. She'd heard the commotion, seen the lights, and her face was a canvas of pure terror. "Maya!" she cried, her eyes scanning the room frantically. "Right here, Mom," Maya whispered from her booth. Sarah rushed to her, pulling her into a desperate, crushing hug. She rocked her back and forth, murmuring her name over and over, her tears soaking into her daughter's hair. For a long moment, the entire diner was silent, bearing witness to the raw, overwhelming power of a mother's love and relief. The other patrons, who had been watching the drama unfold with a mixture of fear and fascination, slowly began to understand. They looked at the large, quiet bikers, and then at the small girl being held by her mother, and the pieces fell into place. The hushed whispers were now ones of awe, not suspicion. Deputy Miller came inside, his hat in his hands. He walked straight to Styx. "Dom. My dispatch got a call from a lawyer named Frank. Said his client was holding a man for a restraining order violation at this location. Didn't realize that client was you." Styx finally allowed himself to stand, stretching his stiff limbs. He gestured toward Razor, who gave the deputy a crisp nod. That would be him. "We wanted to make sure it was handled by the book." Miller shook his head, a look of grudging respect on his face. "Peterson's been on our radar. Sarah filed the order last month after he broke into her apartment. He's been making threats ever since. We've been trying to track him, but he's slippery. You holding him here. You probably saved this girl's life tonight, Dom. The department owes you one. And your associates." He glanced around at the other Iron Valley members, who were now quietly filing out, their job done. They mounted their bikes and, with a series of low rumbles, disappeared into the twilight, leaving only Bull, Razor, and Styx behind. Sarah, having composed herself, approached their table, holding Maya's hand tightly. Her face was tear-streaked, but filled with a gratitude so profound, it was humbling. I don't know what to say. The manager told me my daughter was bothering you. I was about to come out and apologize." Styx looked down at Maya, who was peering at him from behind her mother's leg. "She wasn't bothering me, ma'am. She was being brave. She told me the truth when no one else would listen. You've got a smart, strong kid here." Sarah's eyes welled up again. She looked from Styx to Bull to Razor, her gaze full of wonder. "You all did this? You stayed here all this time? For her?" Bull answered, his voice gentle. "A friend was in trouble. That's all we needed to know. How can I ever thank you? How does a parent thank someone for that?" Styx knelt, bringing himself down to Maya's level. He ignored the protesting creak of his knees. He looked her right in the eye. "You already did. You asked for help. That's the hardest part. You did all the work. We just watched the door." He reached into his vest and pulled out something small and heavy. It was a challenge coin, thick and made of brass. On one side was the Iron Valley MC crest, on the other the words Fortis et Fidelis, strong and faithful. He pressed it into Maya's small hand and closed her fingers around it. "This is from me and from all my brothers. It means you're part of our family now. It means you're under our protection. If you are ever scared, if you ever need help, and you feel like no one is listening, you hold on to this, and you remember that you have an army of big, ugly bikers who will always, always believe you. Got it?" Maya looked at the coin, then back at his face, her eyes wide with wonder. She nodded, clutching the coin to her chest like the most precious treasure in the world. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." Styx's gruff exterior cracked, and a genuine smile touched his lips. "I'll always see you, kid. That's a promise." Thank you for watching this story about Maya and Styx. It's a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride Harleys. But the real lesson is simpler. Believe children. Pay attention. The smallest voice can carry the most important truth. If you agree, subscribe to Bike Diaries, hit that hype button, and share this with everyone who needs to remember that one person can make all the difference. The membership link is below for those who want to support our mission. Now, we want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever been in a situation where your gut told you something was wrong? What did you do? 1 year later. The air at the Iron Valley MC Clubhouse was filled with the smell of barbecue, the sound of classic rock, and the laughter of children. It was the club's annual charity toy drive, an event that brought out the entire community. Styx was manning the grill, flipping burgers with a practiced ease, when he felt a familiar, small presence beside him. He looked down and smiled. "Well, look what the cat dragged in." Maya, now 11, beamed up at him. She looked different from the terrified girl in the diner. Her face was full of color, her hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her eyes, once wide with fear, now sparkled with life and confidence. Her mother, Sarah, stood a few feet away, talking and laughing with Bull's wife. She'd gotten the car fixed and found a better job in a town 20 miles away, far enough to feel safe, but close enough to visit. "You're going to burn those," she said, pointing a finger at a row of burgers. Styx feigned offense. "I am a master of the grill, thank you very much. These are perfectly charred." Maya giggled. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn brass coin. She held it out on her palm. The metal was warm from her touch. "Still got it," she said. Styx's smile softened. "I never doubted it for a second." They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, the chaos of the party swirling around them. The story of the Starlight Diner had become a piece of club legend, a testament to Styx's instincts and the unwavering loyalty of the Brotherhood. It was a story they told new prospects to teach them what the patch really meant. It wasn't about being tough, it was about being the wall that stood between the innocent and the dark. Sarah walked over, putting an arm around her daughter's shoulders. She looked at Styx, her eyes still holding that same profound gratitude from a year ago. "He has nightmares sometimes," she said quietly, referring to her ex-husband, who was now serving a multi-year sentence for stalking and other charges. But they're getting fewer, and whenever she's scared, she holds that coin. It's her shield. Styx looked at Maya, who was now happily explaining the rules of a video game to Ghost's son. She was safe. She was healing. She was thriving. "That's what it's for," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Later that day, as the party was winding down, Maya came to find him. She was holding a drawing. It was a picture of a big, burly biker with a graying beard, standing in front of a diner door. Behind him, a small girl was peeking out, a smile on her face. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, were 5 words. "You knew where I was." Styx took the drawing, his tough guy facade melting away completely. He folded it carefully and tucked it into the inside pocket of his vest, right next to his heart. It was a better medal than any police department or motorcycle club could ever award him. It was a promise kept, a life saved, and a bond forged in a moment of fear that had blossomed into a lifetime of family. He was Styx, Sergeant-at-Arms of the Iron Valley MC, and he was Maya's guardian, always.